Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art Lounge. It's my favorite time of the day. I'm your host, and I'm going to jump into today's lesson. So what you're looking at right now is something I worked on last week, something I was showing you guys. Which is building from your block form, using the block form as your starting point, as something to construct until you're able to really get down like the dimensions, the proportions of everything. And really the block form is useful for multiple things. It's great for something like foreshortening, for example. When it comes to this hand, right, it's not flat. You're not seeing like a flat image of it. It's in perspective. So some things are going to look shorter and some things are going to look longer. Some things are going to look bigger. Some things are going to look smaller, depending on that perspective. So using this block form is an excellent way to make sure things look proportionate. And it's something that's also very useful, not only for hands. It could be pretty much used for anything, really. You could do it for animals. You could do it for vehicles. It's very useful for vehicles. If you're drawing vehicles or any sort of machinery, it's an excellent way to start. And I'm going to show you guys another example, which is this right here. It's just showing how you can use this block form, this box form, to construct a head as well. And the most useful feature about it is that you can establish planes, which is basically just surfaces, different surfaces on the face. So you got the first plane, which is the front of the face, then you got another plane that's on the side. These are your big planes. These are the large shapes. There's also planes that could be a little bit smaller to help you understand different parts of the face in a similar way. As you could see here, well, I guess this drawing could illustrate it very well. This is another plane right here. Then on top of that forehead, the part that curves, if you pay attention to it on here, it's kind of similar as well here on this model. But yeah, this section, that's another plane. So within large planes, there are also smaller ones. For example, the bridge of the nose right here, that's another plane. So it's just showing different sections where things start to curve, basically. Things start to take three-dimensional form. So yeah, that's one of the most useful features when it comes to using the block form. And just to summarize things a little bit, really I'm showing you guys different tools, different ways you can achieve a good drawing, because sometimes you got to pull out multiple tools to get the job done. It's not just one. You can't just rely on the block form to get a good drawing. You have to rely on things like recognizing the space between objects. So for example, noticing the distance between the eye and the nostril, like this section right here. Very important, incredibly vital to a good drawing. If you end up making this distance too long, it's going to look off. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to drawing the face. Recognizing the distance between let's say this side of the lip and the side of the face. This is just a tool, a way of thinking that allows you to achieve accuracy, that allows you to eventually get your eye used to seeing the face in its proper proportion, in its anatomically correct form. So all these tools that I'm mentioning, using the block form, understanding or recognizing the distance between objects, all of these are just tools that you have in your tool belt as an illustrator, and you're going to pull them out depending on what the circumstance is. The one that I mentioned earlier, the recognizing space between objects is incredibly important for accuracy. It's something that you could use when you're working off of, not only from your imagination, not only when you're practicing face features or anatomy, but also when it comes to, for instance, drawing from references, or using, let's say, the frame of whatever you're working on. Let's say you're working on an entire page, and you could recognize, let's say you're working from a reference and it's an entire page. You could say, okay, well, what's the distance between the drawing in a reference to the edges of the page, which allows you to construct from there and make sure that it fits the same way as it does on the page of the reference. Because sometimes you might end up drawing it too big or too small, and it might not fit what you're looking for. And that could be used for something smaller. Let's say you draw it within a frame. You could say, okay, well, based on the image, this is how close the object is to the frame, so my drawing should be similar to that. And then from there, you could just continue to construct it. It allows you to maintain placement, which is really, really important. Something that becomes more and more important as you're building the drawing, building the backgrounds, building other characters or environments, whatever it is. That becomes very crucial. So anyways, yes, these are all the tools. These are different things. Things like drawing lightly at the beginning of your drawing. That's another tool that you could pull out when you're drawing. It's actually the most crucial one that you have to use, especially when you're just starting to draw something. Not as a beginner. This is a tactic that's great for all artists. And things like keeping a distance from the tip of the pen or pencil, which allows you to really see your entire drawing as opposed to blocking with your hand. As you could see, only certain parts of the image is visible. So you have to do a lot of this to kind of see, well, is it proportionate? Are the features proportionate? That's one. Two, it also, in this state, it kind of, because you are really focusing on one area and you could only see one area, kind of puts you into this like meticulous zone. And that's something you want to avoid at the beginning of your drawing. You don't want to jump into detail immediately before you figure out, well, how big is it supposed to be? Does it fit everywhere where it should be? Maybe I should just sketch it out to make sure. You don't want to jump into that detail, because once you do and you put in time and you make something look really good, by the time you get to another area, you might find out, oh, it's a little bit way off. It's not even centered, or it's not into the bottom right where I need it to be. It's too big. And then you have to delete all that effort that you put in. So keeping your pencil at the tip of the pen, at the tip, or holding it at the tip, puts you into all these different states. It puts you into a meticulous zone. You start pressing hard. You want to avoid all that. You don't want to teach yourself this habit, which is something that a lot of beginners tend to do. It's something that has to deal with controlling the pencil, because you don't have enough experience with it. So you hold on tight to make sure all your lines come out right. And you're also learning, so you're a little bit tense. You're really trying. You're not experienced, so all that kind of goes into the pencil, and you start straining on it. That's something you don't want to get used to, and it's very easy to get into that state. So again, it's another tool. It's something that you have to get good at using. So all these things that I just mentioned, they're all tools that you pull out depending on the circumstance. At some point you might want to get into the zone and really start getting meticulous with all the details, and that's where holding the pen or a pencil up close can really be helpful. But really, the more you get used to keeping a distance, the more it becomes like your default. You almost feel uncomfortable with anything else, and you still get excellent results. So really, it just depends. Again, it depends on the circumstance, but by your default, I believe, is best to have at a distance, light grip, not pressing too hard on it, because it creates a very rigid experience. You know, you're in this very tense state. You know, you're gripping the pencil hard, you're pressing on a paper hard, you're focusing really hard. All that creates like a tense kind of drawing, I believe. So you want to get into a very free-flowing state, loosen up, you know, that sort of thing. You want to teach yourself that. So yeah, just keeping all these tools around. And the best way to do that is by writing this stuff down. When you're a beginner, you might not remember it as well. You know, you're just learning this stuff. So by having it written in your sketchbook, you know, if you open up your sketchbook every day, you could flip through and you could see that it's written up there, and it'll instantly remind you like, oh yeah, it's this, 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 and this. That's really important for me to remember every time I sit down to draw. And that quickens the pace, you know, rather than drawing and then reminding yourself as you draw, like, oh yeah, this is beneficial, you know, having to go through that process again. You're saving yourself a lot of time. You're saving yourself time, and you're making it a habit, and it's a quick reminder. So you're doing yourself a huge favor. And plus, if you get in the habit of writing things down, you're really, really gonna improve things for yourself. It's not just in drawing, but just in general. Writing is so essential when it comes to forming good habits, whether it's with drawing or other things. You know, just not having to go through the same motions mentally every day. You know, you're like, oh yeah, what was it that I came up, like the previous day I came up with a solution to this problem that I had in my head. What was it? You know, you don't have to go through that. If you write it down, you saved yourself an entire day of going through the same cycle, basically. So some people, I believe, end up going in cycles, or they're going round and round and just not getting anywhere because of things like that. You know, they don't write things down to remind themselves. So every day it's like the same story happens over and over, and then at the end of the day they're like, oh yeah, that's a problem, I shouldn't do that. You know, when it comes to drawing, when it comes to other things. So yeah, writing, very helpful. You don't have to be a writer to write. It's a very helpful tool. So yeah, just getting yourself in the habit of writing stuff down for drawing, as I mentioned, all those tools, saves you a lot of time, speeds up your process. So I'm going to just continue on with that today, with more examples. So you guys saw from here, this process to this process. And I'm going to do another example here, and I'm going to include another step. So really, it should be about 3 to 4 steps when it comes to completing a drawing. Depending on how much level of detail you want to go into. But the most crucial ones, I'm going to say, are the first 2 steps. The first step is, as like I mentioned, you're going to sketch out the general idea. Big shapes, you know, focusing on big shapes, not going into detail, just making sure things fit in the parameter that you're working in. So here I'm gonna quickly sketch drawing big shapes, using basic shapes. I'm not really dedicating myself to anything. Remember, there are placeholders, and you can always move things around as you develop to suit your need. You know, make it smaller, make it shorter, make it a little more to the left, to the right, whatever. It's just important step to assert, like, to determine the parameters for your drawing. So that's done, right? I got this shape out. I made sure that it fits within this limited space that I have. And now I could start defining things more. So this is the second important step. And this is the step where I start focusing on more of like block form. block form that also helps determine, as I mentioned earlier, planes, right? Places where things start to curve, certain sections that start to curve. Now I'm going to do an extra step here and really draw through to show this block form that I mentioned. As you can see, I'm drawing it through the fingers and I'm dividing it into 4 sections. And then from there, I could continue to build the fingers. Now, it's kind of confusing, but you just have to be venturous. You have to try and dedicate some time to it. I am doing it at a little bit at a faster pace, but take your time. It's not about speed, it's about understanding it. And once you understand it, then your speed starts to increase, right? Because you're not spending time trying to figure it out, trying to make sense of it. It already makes sense to you. It's just the technical part now where you just have to sync your hand-eye coordination and create the lines that you need. So yeah, don't rush it. Take your time and try to understand these block forms. How do these forms fold, for example? As something that I mentioned, really crucial when it comes to drawing the hands, which is going to be I'm going to say the remaining of this week. I'm going to be doing lots of hand examples. You guys are going to see many variations of gestures. It's going to be a lot of fun. But something that I mentioned when it comes to hands that's really important to recognize is the folds, where the folds happen. A lot of people assume it comes from the base here. When it comes to drawing, when you're drawing, you're not thinking about it as realistically as when you're looking at your hand. It becomes like more of a guessing game in the mind when you guys are learning this stuff. So here's a shortcut for you. Here's something for you to recognize that really could affect how your hands look. So where the fingers fold. So the first one, the initial one, I'm going to show you on the finger itself. The initial one is halfway at the halfway point. It's not here. Try to bend this yourself. Try to bend the top. It's not going to happen. So the initial one is going to be right at the half point, right? And then after that, it's going to be the top. Now you're able to actually do it. You're able to curl it more. To maintain that is challenging. Some people, I think, are able to do that. I think there's people who play piano, maybe. They have a lot more finger flexibility. But yeah, for most people, it's at a half point and then the top part curves. Now pay attention here. This is the interesting part. It doesn't curve starting at the base here for the last one to make a fist. It actually curves halfway down, well, right about here, right where the soft sponges are. So I'm going to say at the knuckle. So first bend, second bend, and then the knuckle is the part that creates the last bend to form a fist. And that becomes really important when you're drawing the hand. A lot of people get confused at that stage where they're like, okay, well, it's supposed to form a fist, so they try to draw it with the fingers kind of really curled in, which looks really weird. So here, I'm just gonna highlight the parts, the planes basically, that I mentioned for the fingers, and it's using the block form. I'm not just highlighting it for you guys to see the planes, I'm also highlighting it to demonstrate how it's easier to use the block form to create this foreshortening effect. You know, you're not drawing the fingers flat as you see on the camera, it's angled. So using this block form, I'm able to do that and draw it in the correct perspective according to how the hand is positioned. Now I'm going to move on to the top finger, or should I say ring finger here. So it's not just about showing joints, and it's not just about planes to help you figure out where to shade. It's also about helping you understand foreshortening, helping you construct it in a way that makes sense in perspective. Because up until now, really, I'm gonna say for the most part, you guys are learning how to draw the face features and how to draw parts of the body in a very flat sort of perspective, right? Like if we were to look back here, flat, or like, as you can see, it's frontal view. It's front view of the face. It's not in profile really. Some features are in profile, but for the most part, with terrible drawings, for the most part, you guys are drawing things on a pretty frontal perspective. This is an old sketchbook. I'm still embarrassed of my old work, I guess. But yeah, just more examples here. You guys see, it's a frontal view, some profile, but for the most part, it's that. So you guys aren't really getting much insight to when it comes to perspective, right? And this is kind of like the intro for it, using hands, not as complex as doing an entire body in perspective, which is really useful. I think it's very useful when you're a beginner. You don't want to be overwhelmed. You know, you don't want to, it could be a lot to learn from the beginning, and you don't want to overwhelm yourself and just kind of fry, basically. You know, you want to stay motivated. So it's easier to just break things down. You know, do the hands, do the feet, do the mouth, do the nose, like all those things as more simple examples, as more simple exercises. And then once you get the concept, once you feel a little bit more comfortable, once you got your feet wet, basically, you could start pushing yourself to understand more complex examples. You know, you might push yourself to swim a little further, you know, than the shore, metaphorically speaking. Okay, so we got this far. also another little insight into drawing hands, which is this right here, the distance, well, the width difference between certain parts of the hand. So you're drawing this part right here, and as you could see, this is thicker than here. So when you're drawing it in perspective, you got to take into account that. You don't want to draw literally a toast. You know, you don't want to draw something like this, where everything is really parallel. You could, you know, you could do that and then fix it from there, but just something to cut down the time of that. You want to make sure that you make it wide. And that's going to be more accurate. You're going to save yourself time correcting stuff. And because this is terrible paper, it's so thin that it's really easy to like imprint your pencil on there. Yeah, which just kind of says paper is important, y'all. This is something that I talk about, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I want to stay focused on this example here. So I'm going to do it again. You know, this is just to show again how it went from something as basic. As a matter of fact, let me keep the first process for you guys to see. So I'm going to start out again. Very simple, basic shapes. Using the circle for the palm. Using big shapes. To make sure things fit properly. So now that I have it, just gonna keep it here. I'm not gonna go over it as a way to show you guys the steps. And I'm using all the different tools, as I mentioned. And it's become more and more ingrained. You know, it's something that my eye darts to, and my hand-eye coordination just goes to immediately. You know, so you know, don't be disappointed if you're not doing the same. Again, this is practice. This is something that you will eventually get to as well. You know, you will become faster, and I have lots to improve on. You know, I'm not this isn't the best, what I'm saying. I could always do better. But I am noticing improvement. So this is something you will as well. And it just comes from practice, as I mentioned, just reminding yourself to pull out these tools whenever you're drawing something. So yeah, my eye immediately dart to, well, what's the distance between the thumb and the fingers, right? Here it's the same, here it's the same. You don't want to make it shorter. You know, that's something that you want to look out for. So by recognizing the space difference between objects, it allowed me to immediately draw it the same way. You guys are going to see that more. I'm going to talk about that more in the next stream, which I'm also really happy to jump back into. It's drawing comics, where I'm going to be drawing from John Buscema's work. It's another really excellent way to improve your drawing. by drawing from comics, something that's already made, and something that you would want to, I would assume somebody who's into the stream is somebody who's into drawing comics. So what better way of learning how to draw comics than by actually drawing the comics that you're interested in? There's so much to learn from there, so much to understand. I'm going to go over that in that stream. But yeah, just to mention, that's a tool that becomes incredibly useful in that process as well, as you develop better and better understanding of anatomy and all these other features. All right, so again, same process. Just big general shapes, nothing specific. And it kind of highlights the importance of drawing basic shapes, relying on basic shapes as your quick tools. You know, sometimes when, and I remember when I was learning, there were some instructors or some people who were drawing, or, you know, that I would watch or whatever else, they would quickly sketch things out. You know, they're like, oh, do a fast drawing. And I would try to do the same thing, but my mind wasn't really jumping to anything specific. I was just forming lines and eventually using those lines to shape what I wanted. Whereas you really could build your confidence and speed by relying on basic shapes. So if you practice cylinder shapes, if you practice drawing the circle often, they become your go-to when it comes to things like that. And just because it is the beginning of the week, this is something I like to go over for all of you who are learning, who are new, who are beginners, even intermediates. You know, this is something that I think is incredibly important, which is this right here. Now, I'm not advocating Crescent. It's not like some sort of sponsorship, though. I'm not against that idea, as I do like this sketchbook. This is an excellent, small pad, great quality paper. I like how it has like smoothness, but some texture to it as well, so it doesn't feel like you're kind of gliding on paper, which is what this kind of feels like. I don't like it. But it's thick enough to withstand wet medium as well. Like if you wanted to do ink, you could totally ink on this. You know, if you wanted to use a marker or something, you know, whatever it is, it would withstand it. So whenever you look for a sketch pad, think about what you're using and what kind of paper you need. It's really important. I didn't think about it when it came to this. I kind of got a sketchbook based on size, and I thought about spiral. You know, I like bending it over. As you can see, I'm like not having it completely open. It's great for portability. You know, if you're going out somewhere, if you're out in the park, you're sitting in a park, you're drawing from you know, still life or whatever, or landscapes or cityscapes. It's excellent. You get to fold it over. You don't have to have like this open book kind of scenario. So I thought about that. I thought about the size, but I did not think about the texture. You know, what kind of paper it is, how thick it is. And that's something that you guys should absolutely consider. I highly encourage you guys to go to your local art store, you know, go and walk around, and look at the different type of paper, feel it out, look at it to see if it's transparent or not. You know, some stores, I'm going to say a lot of them, can offer like some sort of sample page where you could draw on it and see if it's the kind of paper that you like, if it's smooth, if it's more rough textured. For me personally, I like a little, like very slight texture, but for the most part for it to be smooth. I don't want to have like a bumpy ride when it comes to drawing on a paper. You know, I don't want it to like grind the pencil, and for my lines to have this kind of jaggedy look to it. I don't enjoy that. And I also don't like it when it's so slick that it feels like I'm drawing on plastic, kind of. You know, it's like an in-between of paper and plastic. I don't like that either. So, you know, it's nice to take the pencil that you like using, go to a store, support your local store, buy from there. Get to know people there as well. You know, it's a cool place. People who enjoy art. It's like-minded people more so than other places if you're into art. But yeah, support them, talk to them, ask them if they could, if they have like some sort of sample page that you could draw on. But get yourself one of these small pads. This is what I originally was talking about. It becomes very useful if you are, again, if you're out and about, or if you're sitting on public transportation. You know, it's soft, it's soft bound, it's not hard. You could use some Scotch tape. You know, you could use some like black Scotch tape, not Scotch tape, duct tape. You could use some black duct tape and cover the exterior so that way it doesn't fall apart, because this is pretty soft. As a workaround, you know, to maintain the sketchbook as you carry it around with you, and just practice simple things like this. Practice basic shapes, as you could see here, just all over the page. If you're on public transportation, it's not the best setting for you to sit down and draw a masterpiece, but it is a good setting to do something so simple. Get in the habit of drawing these things, drawing the cylinder shape. As you could see, this is the example here. Like most parts of the body are comprised of the cylinder shape. You start out the head as with a circle, and then you add the cup shape, and that becomes your unit of measurement for everything else. So you want to make sure you draw the circle properly. You don't want it to be lopsided. Then you divide that in half, and you want to make sure that both sides are equal to each other. It's evenly divided. If you draw it lopsided, one side might be bigger, the other one might be smaller, thinner, wider, whatever. So you want to get good at drawing these basic shapes. And once again, the purpose to it is so that you could jump to those basic shapes when you're sketching things out. I know what to do. I know where to go when it comes to quick sketching. You know, it's not just random lines hoping they eventually shape out what you're looking at. You could also practice cross-hatching, you know, get better confidence with your line work, making these quick line strokes. You can practice line variation. You could practice shading, you know, going from highlight to shadow in a very smooth transition, not pressing too hard. You know, as I mentioned, those tools. Great opportunity to practice all these simple exercises in these small sketchbooks when you're on the go somewhere. You're not at home. You're not in your work environment. So, anyways, getting back to this. It's something that I just like to bring up at the beginning of the week. You know, I feel like it's a great reminder. All right, so yeah, jumping back into this, sketching using these basic shapes, sketching out the entire drawing. Not going into detail, just general shapes. Using cylinder shape for the fingers. Recognizing the distance between objects by looking at distance between the thumb and the middle finger here, making sure that's the same. And now you have like this general shape like you have it here, right? So now we're going to take this through the 3-step process basically. So the first step was this, sketching out the entire drawing, making sure that it fits, that it's even the same size here. And now I'm going to start using the next phase, which is using the box form to make sure that things are proportionate in perspective. There is a lot of foreshortening here. The thumb is further out in the distance. Things are angled to the side, so you want to make sure that as you draw the fingers that they are drawn proportionally in perspective. So the first plane is going to be the side, then the next plane is going to be the inside of the palm, then the next plane is going to be the thumb area and the side of the thumb here. Just kind of following along with the thumb. I'm creating the side over here. This is a box form for it. The top plane of the finger. The middle plane of the finger, and then finally the the top plane of the finger. Now from there, I'm gonna do the ring finger. Now, unfortunately, ladies and gents, I am slowly coming to an end for figure drawing basics. I will be back tomorrow for more, absolutely. And there's going to be more examples, more poses. It's going to be a full week of hand drawings. Now, you guys are always welcome to ask questions. Yeah, I'm always happy to answer them. Whatever you are struggling with when it comes to drawing, post requests. I could do more examples of it or talk about it in more detail. This will help other people as well, and is going to be good insight. So don't hesitate. Ask away. And I'll write you back, or I'll talk about it in the stream, or both. I have to admit, sometimes I get carried away with whatever it is that I'm thinking about, whatever it is that I'm talking about, and sometimes I miss chats. Whatever you guys write in chat, so if I do miss it, I'll always reread it after, and I'll either talk about it in the next stream, or I'll write you back. Okay, so we're here, right? The same phase as it is here. Now after this, it's just having to refine these lines more, start connecting them. And I drew them really dark, so it's going to be a little bit more work, but you're connecting the joins, you're rounding off corners, you're not giving them these harsh edges. You're connecting joints, and you're going to see how little by little it really starts to look more and more realistic. Just simple thing like that. You're just curving things off. You're not really going into a lot of detail here. But yeah, because I pressed so hard on it, it's going to look more technical than it would if you actually follow the steps of making sure you draw lightly, that you're not pressing too hard on it. But for the sake of your viewership, I have to make it visible for you guys, so you're going to see these harsh lines there. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to erase them. uh, to clean up the drawing a little bit. And again, these are placeholders. So, for example, this harsh line is just there for you guys to see the plane. But really, you're going to start adding muscle to it. You're going to start adding the skin and the folds on there, and that's going to make it look thicker in some ways. I'm going to erase these lines from the base of the finger. I'm not going to spend way more time on this, everybody, because I do, as I mentioned, have to end the stream. But if you guys do enjoy this content, remember to hit the like and subscribe button. They both help the stream. They're greatly appreciated by yours truly, of course. And make sure you stick around. I'm going to be taking a quick 5-minute break, and then I'm going to be back for Figure Drawing Basics. And also look out for a special stream this week. In fact, I got some great special streams coming up for you guys. This Friday is going to be one of them. It's going to be a continuation of Gil Elfgren, which is going to be part, I'm going to say, is it part 5 or 6? There's going to be many parts to it because there's just so much work that I'd like to show you guys. I'm pretty excited about that. So that's going to be this Friday, and then next week is going to be another special intro, which I'm also really happy to share with you guys. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be different. It's not going to be Gil Elfgren, although that is going to continue. So make sure you look out for that as well. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I will see you in the next stream. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art Lounge Alley. This is Conan, part 41, drawing comics. I am your host, and here is where I left off last time, which is nowhere. It's blank page. No, I'm just starting out a new panel in the paper, the page I was working on before. I'm going to show you guys, those of you who are just seeing it for the very first time. I kind of started inking it because, to be honest, I haven't done inking in a really long time, and I missed it. So I just started inking it, and halfway through it, I was like, wow, this brush pen kind of sucks. I'm going to show you guys the results and kind of like what I'm thinking right now. There it is. So yeah, this is it right here. I've been using this guy right here, and it is good for its purpose, which is if you're like on the go somewhere, if you're like standing up and you're doing some examples or something, you don't have like that whole like setup basically where you could dip your brush in some ink and actually start inking stuff. So it's really good for that. It's good for mobility in a sense. Or if you're like out, let's say if you're out, you're painting, or you want to use some inks or something, this is good for that. But it dries out, so you have to clean it every time to make sure that it flows. But it's a bit of a hassle, I'm gonna say, because to refill it, and then you have to really make sure you clean it properly, and then you dry it properly, and because it dries out, I'm gonna say I'm not favoring it. I was looking at some of John Buscema's videos of him like inking, and he was just using a brush pen. Like, all this is brush pen. Not a brush pen, just a simple brush. Something like this. You know, he was just using that. And he was able to make, like, you could see how fine some of these lines are and how broad some of these lines are as well. But he got so good at it that you don't need these technical things there. So while I'm at my desk, I'm going to switch over to just using a brush. I'm going to dip it in some black ink and just use it that way. And that just kind of gets rid of that, this festering sort of idea in my head that the brush pen isn't actually full black ink, because you do want, like, if you wash it, some of the water dilutes the ink, you know, and then if you just squeeze out on it, eventually you dry it out, but it still kind of dilutes the black ink. Whereas I'm always going to get fresh black ink with this, and the bristles are a lot easier to clean when it comes to this one. Yeah, so I'm going to just kind of transition to a very traditional form of inking. You know, if you could achieve, like, look at that thin little lines there on the hand. You could achieve that using a brush pen. I want to get that good, you know. And I think he also used pen nibs, you know, that are metal, and that kind of allows thinner lines, which I do have. So I might consider that as well. I might actually just really revert to old school stuff. Anyways, so I was testing things out on this one. I'm pretty much done with this. I'm gonna I don't know if I should. I'm just thinking about whether I should ink today. Nah, I really do want to finish this page and move on to the next page. I finished up all these before in this old sketchbook of mine. Great sketchbook. I highly encourage you guys to try this one out. It's a Canson. It's a small one. I'm still waiting to hear back from them. I don't think I'm gonna hear back from them. I'm gonna have to just go to like a art store and check out something similar to this. But for the small size, this is an excellent sketchbook because it's able to withstand multiple wet mediums. Like this is watercolor that you're seeing right here. I'm also using India inks. I'm also using regular ink. And it's not, you can't see it through to the other side, which is great, unlike this sketchbook here. The texture on it is excellent. I'm going to say it's like, for me personally, it's perfect texture. It's right in between. It has a little bit of softness to it, while it's still a pretty thick, paper. So the pencil glides on it very nicely. It's not like slick, and it's not so rough where it like grinds the pencil and gives like jaggedy lines. It's a nice soft feel to it. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'm going to say that's the best way to explain it. It works very well with the blue ink, the blue pencil, and regular HB pencil. It feels excellent. So I really like this sketchbook. I'm going to just show you guys these panels that I worked on. And some results on there. As you can see, here is here. I was playing around with some watercolors. This is here. That's here. I'm going to say the next page. Yep. Here. This is here. And that's there. Finish this one. So I'm up to this. And yeah, that way we could start a fresh page. Oh, bummer. I just recognized that it's not in focus. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm gonna have to eventually remember to keep looking. So yeah, let me just quickly show you guys again the completed pages. Here, as you could see, here is here. Whoops. Here is here. Here is here. So I'm not gonna do it all over again. I'd rather continue on, which is over here. I'm pretty excited about this panel because it's faces, and I love drawing faces. I'm a big fan. Not only faces, but his faces. I really enjoy how John Buscema draws faces. I recently acquired John Buscema, the Michelangelo of comics. It's a collection of his work. I also got John Buscema's sketchbook, which shows all of his sketches that he's done for himself, for fun, for testing things out before making them final. Beautiful collection. I highly encourage you guys to buy one of those if you're into John Buscema. If you like this art and you want to see more of it, I'm going to say some of the best drawings are in both of those books. The sketchbook alone, I think the other one is a little bit pricey. Michelangelo's is a little John Buscema, the Michelangelo of comics, is a little bit pricey, but the sketchbook one is pretty good. It's pretty affordable. It's a great collection. You're not losing out on anything, actually. They're both very unique to in their own right. So if you could get both of them, that's even better. But yeah, really great work. At some point, maybe in the future, I'm gonna show you guys excerpts from there. But for now, I'm just gonna continue working on these panels here. Now, if you guys missed out the very first episode of Drawing Comics, I encourage you guys to check it out. It's loaded with content. I show a 5-minute preview, a 5-minute short film about John Buscema that I created, and it gives you guys some some insight into his journey, and of course some work that he's done, some beautiful sketches that he's done. It's overall a really fun little short movie that I made to introduce you guys to John Buscema. I also talk about other artists as well. You guys can check that out. And you can access it by going to the video section and filtering it based on collections, which will open up a folder for you for every single stream. And one of the streams is going to be a highlights folder, where you could find just the 5-minute flick, or you could head over to Drawing Comics folder and check out the very first stream there that has other artists that I mentioned, other content talking about drawing comics and other illustrators and such. So anyways, I'm going to continue on with this panel right here. Now I'm going to start out the way I like to do it is by drawing the frame. And I think it's very useful. It sets the limits. You know, I know how big it has to be. Now this is another great thing about drawing from comics, is that you become familiar with the process. You know, if you eventually you're gonna have a project, right? And you're working towards that, and it's better to start somewhere than to be completely new to it and be intimidated by the entire process. So this gives you an idea of like, how long is it going to take me to create a panel, let's just say, and based off of that you could be like, it's going to take me a day to do a page, which really is excellent, or it's going to take me a day to do a panel, you know, and then from there you could kind of gauge your speed and try to improve yourself. See, this is like a good example of how you use yourself as competition. If you start out by doing a panel a day, you want to bring yourself to doing 2 panels a day. So you could be like, all right, now I'm going to take it to the next level with myself and push myself to create 2 panels at the same level of quality as the first one, etc., etc., etc. It just highlights this idea. I don't believe in competition. I think it's incredibly toxic. I think just learning from people, learning from you know, what they've developed, it's a different way of looking at progress. I think competition is very toxic. People start to resent each other when it comes to that. People rub things in, whatever. It breeds aggressive environments. It breeds toxic behavior. I'm not into that, especially in the art field. I don't encourage it. I think that everybody has a unique voice when it comes to art. There isn't, it's not a competition. You know, there is no better than, because the voices are unique. You know, the way John Buscema draws is different than the way that Jim Lee draws, the way that Kim Jung-gi drew. Like, all of these are great artists. There isn't a number 1, a number 2, or number 3 in that scenario. They're all great in their own way. So I think that's the best way to perceive art in general. It's about self-expression. It's about creativity. It's not about it's not an ego trip. It's not an ego battle. And I think it's a pretty toxic way to view that field. Yeah, I think the best competition is with yourself. As I mentioned, you can set yourself up for improvement. You know, you could be like, okay, well, I want to be better at drawing comics, so I need to become better at drawing the figure. I need to become faster. What do I do to get there? You know, and slowly build yourself towards that endeavor. Anyways, yeah, so starting out by drawing comics actually allows you to become familiar with the process. Like, you first start out with the frame, then what do? You know, it allows you to practice things like backgrounds, understanding backgrounds. How do you draw a car? How do you draw? It's all there for you. You know, you don't have to sit there wondering what to do next or waiting for inspiration to kick in. You always have something there to work on. And I think that's the biggest step. You know, I remember for me, before I started taking on this journey, I would wait for inspiration to kick in. And this is a while ago. But it would be one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling it. And then there would be a day where I'm like, oh, I really want to sit down and draw. And I would spend hours and hours and hours. And then the next day it would be different, you know. So I kind of relied on this very intuitive approach, which is the wrong way to go. You know, that's not how you get better. I think it's the wrong perception of the art field. Like, a lot of people, I think, are I guess misinformed when it comes to it. They think that art is this very intuitive sort of thing where it's like, you know, it really just comes to you, and you know, it's a gift of some sort, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And I feel like in some ways it's stopping people from actually pursuing it because of that. It's kind of like brainwashing in a way. It does eventually become that, because like I said, you know, you train in anything enough and it becomes an intuitive process. You know, you, same way as when it came to you learning to read, you know, you had to first study the alphabet, and you had to really take your time practicing a lot of it, and writing and reading and remembering words and how to spell them. And it was a very technical process. But now, when you think of how do you spell and, you don't sit and like wonder and, you know, recite the alphabet to remember the letters. It just intuitively comes to you, and you write it very quickly without even thought. So the same thing happens when it comes to drawing. You know, you eventually, after learning all these very technical things, it becomes intuitive. Granted, there are some people who start out that way, but the point isn't to be intuitive about it. The point is to get good at art, to get good at illustration, to get good at playing music or writing or whatever the field that you're interested in might be. That's the point. So if it takes you longer, that's not a big deal. And the important thing is you're gonna get there because you're dedicated. So yeah, you know, I think just sitting down and drawing comics prevents you from venturing into that wrong mindset of like, oh, I have to feel inspired to do it. I have to know, you know, it has to come to me in order for me to sit down and draw. Now, this is a great way for you to practice every day. You have the material, it teaches you everything, you know, from drawing buildings to face expressions to poses to camera angles to perspective. It's all here. The only thing you have to do is push yourself. You know, don't make excuses, and sit down without a second thought and draw. That's how you're gonna get really good at it. So multiple reasons why it's excellent to draw from comics. So pick your favorite comic. Pick something that you really enjoy and draw it from cover to cover. Draw every page and push yourself. You know, as I mentioned, best competition is yourself. So tell yourself, like, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna draw it exactly as I see it. You know, not only are you gonna improve your hand-eye coordination, you're just gonna level up and push your ability to the next level. Push your attention to detail to the next level. Improve your hand-eye coordination. All those things are going to start to come into play. So that's all that's really required. No need to think about camera angles. No need to think about it. It's here for you. You just have to practice your craft. Now, I'm not really satisfied with this whatsoever. It looks kind of weird. So I'm gonna scratch that. Trying to pinpoint where it looks weird. See, it has something to do with the brows. The brows, the eye. Gonna take a break a little bit because I feel like I'm like getting really sucked into tiny little details, so I'm gonna start working on the next part. Now I'm paying attention to the distance between objects here. So for instance, her hair, right? How far away is it from the nose here? And I'm gonna make sure that that distance is the same. I'm gonna make some marks as placeholders for the eyes, for the nose, for the mouth, because I think I'm gonna have to move things around. paying attention to the distance between the side of her face and the mouth. Like where's that? How far away is it from that? These are just little tools to make sure that things come proportionate. Because you might draw the mouth exactly as it is in here, but it might be too big. You know, or it might be a little bit too to the left or too to the right. So it's not just about the accuracy of what you're drawing. It's also all these other things that come into play as well. Which is why it's important to have these tools to accomplish that. I think key here is in how big the eyes are. It's a very delicate stage because you don't want to make it too big. And even though it's such a delicate stage, and it really depends on like such small little details, it still retains a certain emotion. Like if you look at her face, it shows a little bit of concern and apprehension. And that's what I really love about his work, that regardless of how small the figures of the frame is, he still puts in the time to like really show expression and mood and proportion, and maintains the proportion. Just little details like this line that's in between the brows to suggest a little bit of furrowing, right? I absolutely love that. Just shows how much he loves drawing. Like it's not like, let me just finish this and move on. He's really putting time and care even to the smallest details of a small panel. Speaking of small details, I actually saw, it was a different artist. I saw Dali's work, and there was an exhibition, and I was so shocked to see some of his most famous paintings in very small canvases. Like I'm going to say some of them were maybe like from here, if you guys could see my finger here, or like from here all the way down to the base, which isn't that far. So like from here, I'm gonna say all the way to the bottom. Like that's how big a lot of his paintings were. And it wasn't until much later, actually, like his much later work, and maybe a select few of his paintings, where things started to get big in scale. But I was so shocked to see it. There was like such a huge crowd of people, and you know, I got into that crowd, and what I saw was like what they're staring at was his paintings, because you have to get that close in order to see the detail, in order to see what's going on over there. And it was pretty shocking. For those of you who have never seen Dali's work, I encourage you guys to check it out. I'm sure at some point at the Art Lounge Alley, I'm going to introduce Dali, and in fact have his book. So it'll be pretty cool to talk about him, do a little bit of an intro discussing his life and his work and him as an artist in general. It's very interesting. So that's something to look forward to. And to reassure you guys, there's so much content for the Art Lounge Alley, either from history or even modern day. As I mentioned in the previous stream, next week I'm going to be introducing a new special intro. It's not going to be just Gil Elfgren. That's going to continue. I still got ways to go. I still haven't shown you guys the book. I introduced the book, but I haven't really shown you all the work that's in it. So there's a lot more to come from there. But yeah, it's going to be a new intro. Just a little hint, it's going to be a concert. A little concert. Hint, hint. And I'm really happy that you guys are going to get to see it. I'm going to be happy to see it again because it definitely has its own energy. It's great work. So look forward to that. That's going to be next week. This week is going to be a continuation of Gil Elfgren, which is coming up this Friday. More beautiful work coming from Norman Rockwell, one of his friends, another amazing artist. For those of you who missed it, you guys can always check out the previous streams, going back to part 1 by heading over to the video section and filtering it based on collection, where you will see a folder for the project stream, which is where the full episode is. You could also check out the highlights folder, which also has all of the full streams for Gil Elfgren, to catch up and see what you missed. There's definitely great content on there. It's worth just checking them out for that purpose, not even for the sake of catching up, but just to check out some of the other artists that have inspired Gil Elfgren in his journey to becoming one of the best pinup artists to date. I'm gonna say he's beautiful, beautiful work, and you guys will see what I mean when you do take a look and see his work. So yeah, special stream this Friday. More Gil Elfgren this Friday. Kind of in a zone here. I'm going into detail when there's still more to do. More sketching. Like, I still haven't done the body yet. And his body, his friend's body. Now I'm keeping it light still. I did for a moment get out of that zone. Paying attention now to the head, right? Look at where the head is. It's a little bit lower because it's in perspective. It's a little further away from them, so it's a little lower than her head. Keeping it light. Now here's a little example of another helpful tool that you can use when it comes to gaining accuracy. Now pay attention to this negative space. See that? The space between the bicep and his waist. There's like a little triangle there. So you could focus on just creating that triangle. It's kind of flipping your perspective, right? Instead of focusing on drawing parts of the figure, like his bicep or whatever, you're drawing something abstract like this weird looking triangle space. And that helps you maintain a very accurate distance between objects, distance between the arm and the waist, because you could just try to draw it close to each other, but you might be a little bit off. This is an excellent way, pulling out this tool, you know, paying attention to negative space allows you to attain that better. And it's a good way to kind of refresh your vision. Because something that happens, you know, and this happens to me very frequently, I think it happens to everybody, regardless of what skill level you are, like where you are in your journey of becoming better, you kind of become enamored by the drawing. You're like under a spell, sort of. You know, you don't recognize mistakes anymore. You know, you're so used to the image that your eye isn't paying attention to little details as much. Yeah, it's like kind of being under a spell. And sometimes people take a break, they walk away from a painting or a drawing to come back and look at it with fresh eyes, kind of like forgetting the image a little bit, like making it dissipate from your memory for some time, so that you come back and look at it with fresh eyes and notice little details again. And sometimes you do it by flipping the image upside down and looking at it that way. It kind of like snaps you out of that mode a bit. You're seeing things differently. Another thing people do, and this depends on whether you're doing it traditionally or digitally. If you're doing it traditionally, people will hold a mirror up to the drawing and look at the drawing in the mirror, and they'll start to see certain things by comparing it, let's say, to the reference. They're like, oh yeah, it's a little bit off here as opposed to how it is here, and you kind of start making that correction. Once you notice it in the mirror, you kind of start to notice it in your original drawing. If you're doing it digitally, there's a tool, like you could flip the canvas horizontally, and that way you could see it in this like different sort of perspective that also snaps you out of that mode. So there are these little tools that people use if you don't want to take a break and you want to just like continue working on it. You could depend on those methods to get you there. Sorry about the background, y'all. I'm gonna have to turn it down a little bit. Hold on one second. I'm still binging on Doom Patrol. It's such a good series. I really love the mixture of their creativity and the philosophy in it. Like there's a lot of like really philosophical ideas, like complex ideas about relationships and people, and it just makes me think a lot about all different types of interactions, and I really like about it. And it also is great at breaking that up with humor. Like it has this very interesting, sometimes dark and funny sense of humor. Sometimes it's just really weird and funny because of that. So they do it intentionally. Like all of it is very well done intentionally. The character development is great. The acting is great. I really like Brandon Fraser in it. He's actually like one of my favorite characters in there. Don't want to be anything like them, you know, the characters there, but for the sake of like fantasy and you know, just imaginative sort of things, I do enjoy as a character. And I think that's important, like to distinguish the difference between like, you know, like TV series and characters on there and how and what they're like, as opposed to people acting like these people. You know, sometimes people don't know the difference between it, and they're like so drawn into TV series and characters that they go out into the real world and start acting like these people, and that's just, I think that's crazy. And a lot of these shows, the portrayals of these characters is to say, like, don't do these things. You know, they might be funny because they're just so ridiculous in some ways. Like, you don't want to act that way. And it's just a really dangerous zone when people are so enamored by characters that they can't even develop themselves. Yeah, they're just walking around pretending to be in a TV show all day. That's weird. I think it develops some sort of like psychological dependency and crippling. It has like some sort of crippling effect where people don't grow at all, and they're just stuck in these like TV series modes of like personalities and characters and stuff. It's weird. It's like trying to go out there and be like Superman or Batman or whatever. It's weird. You don't want to do any of those things. That would be really stupid. But you could say that they're your favorite characters and it's fun to watch them, right? So it's like just having to distinguish that, I think, is really important. And it's kind of sad to see because those people never discover themselves. You know, they never try to like venture out and to be who they are, like to discover their own personality. It's like they're just emulating things around themselves. It's absolutely crippling. So when it comes to like relationships, people don't even know how to act because their like entire mode of operation is based on limited characters. You know, like they're not you know, they're just like TV scripts basically that are very limited for whatever the timeline is, what, like an hour, 30 minutes or something, and people are just like quoting or behaving in that manner, which is only for like, you know, an hour and a half of your time. It doesn't set up an example of how you should be for your entire life on all situations. You know, so that's what I mean when it's crippling. Like, people just don't know how to behave outside of these scripted personalities. Scripted behaviors. I'm noticing a little bit of a difference between my frame and the original frame. It's not a huge difference, but for example, the distance between her chin and this like V-neck of her shirt is pretty long. But yeah, actually, just before I got into that train of thought about emulating characters on TV or whatever, it's a great show. If you guys haven't seen it, Doom Patrol, it's worth every single minute. Very creative, very fun storyline, excellent acting, great cinematography. It has it all, I'm gonna say. And I think they're returning soon for season 5. So I'm really excited about that. Can't wait to see what they come up with next. And I'm gonna say they couldn't pick a better actor for Cyborg. It's just how, I guess, what am I basing off of? Comics, or maybe even Teen Titans, like way back then when I used to watch it. And I think the actor really gets that character. But pretty much all of them are great, aside from Brendan Fraser, aside from Cyborg, the guy who plays Cyborg. Pretty much all the actors there are excellent. And as I mentioned, great humor. I really enjoy their humor. So just kind of had it in the background, and each time I notice there are certain like little things that differ. You know, like I'll notice like a line that I missed before, and it's a very clever line. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, actually, and I guess it's right about that time anyways, I ended up completing the project over the weekend. So you guys are you're gonna see a new project starting tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Something new that I'm gonna be working on. I'm still debating on what that should be. I have an idea, but there's like 2 that I'm considering. One of them you guys have seen before if you are a regular here at the Outer Lounge Alley. It is a painting that I started a while back of Socrates that I really like. It's one of my favorite paintings done by David, a French painter. It's one of my favorite painters, actually. Beautiful work. So yeah, it's something that I started a while back and kind of been wanting to get back into like painting, even digitally, you know, like just going back to that. So I might do that, or I might start something else. It's fan art. I'm gonna say that it's fan art. of another series actually that I used to watch a long time ago. It's slightly cheesy. It's nowhere good as good as Doom Patrol, as I just mentioned. But if I'm gonna say I watched bad TV, this is probably it. And it's not even that bad. You know, I still think it's, you know, I was revisiting it today to see what I would do, and kind of miss it. Kind of miss the characters, and it's a lot less heavy, I'm gonna say. It's kind of just like a fun show to watch. It's like a mix between CSI and, I'm gonna say, I don't know, something fantastical. Can't really think of one off the top of my head. But it's they've done an interesting mix there. Where it's like crime, detective, mixed in with like grim fairy tales, which is like fantasy. So it's pretty fun, and I looked at some of the CGI on it and how they were able to create some of the characters, and it's very imaginative. I just forgot, you know, it's been years actually since I've seen it, so it reminded me actually what appealed to me. Its own style. I'm gonna say like it reminds me a little bit of what's the name of that game? Something Scroll. Damn, it's a really popular game too. I can't remember off the top of my head. Give me a second, let me look it up. Elder Scroll. It just instantly popped into my head as I started typing it. Elder Scroll. Like, so it looks like the creatures from that game Elder Scroll. And a little bit more, I'm gonna say too. So yeah, if you guys want to see some like slightly mind-numbing TV series, check that out. Check out Grimm. Pretty sure it's still available on Amazon. So I'm thinking about doing fan art for that for some time, which is also going to be painter style. And during my off time, I'm probably going to do more stuff from, well, most definitely I'm going to be doing more stuff from imagination, more character development and scenes. And I want to do more with that robot, the upright bass playing robot. And I want to do some more scenes that I've been kind of cooking up in my imagination. So I'm going to try to focus on like actually executing it. It's a pretty interesting perspective. I'm going to try to, I'm trying to nail down. But that's the thing with the Art Lounge Alley, guys. Sometimes you don't know what's coming. So I might actually be doing a little bit on that project, and then one day I might switch and show you guys some progress with what I'm cooking up from my imagination. And with that said, everybody, thanks for tuning in. This was a blast as always. It is my favorite time of the day, of the night, to stream for you guys, to talk about art and everything in between. So thanks for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow, same time and place, right here at the Art Lounge Alley.